Good evening. This is the Zoning Commission meeting for April 26, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Here in the Ascension Parish Courthouse, 607 East Worthy Street, Gonzales, Louisiana, 70737, at the Council Chambers, first floor. This meeting is now called to order. Roll call of the members. All members are present and accounted for. Item 3, the minutes. I'll ask for a motion to accept the meeting minutes of the February 8th, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Max Nasser, second by Mark Villa. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with no opposition, that motion passes. Item 4, Chairman's comments. Chairman has just some brief comments tonight. We are looking at some very important items for zoning for the parish, some of the things that we haven't done in quite a long time. So we will be having some hopefully healthy discussions, and I just ask that everybody keep everything very professional and to the point, and we try to figure out what's going to be best. So item 5, moving on. Item 5 is a public hearing to amend the Ascension Parish Development Code for the recommendation for approval or denial to the Ascension Parish Council. Item A is item for consideration, ordinance DC-23.01, requiring a conditional use permit and a site plan review by the Zoning Commission for multifamily residential apartments. Item B, item for consideration, ordinance DC-23.02, creating a new zoning district designation, Countryside CS, Appendix 2, Developmental Code. And then item C, item for consideration, ordinance ZM-23.04, revisions to the zoning map, Countryside CS zoning designation. We're going to open up the public hearing for this, and Ms. Jamaica, has anybody signed up?
No one signed up.
Okay, on that, we will close the public hearing. Administration, Mr. Jerome, do you have any comments on this?
No, just as an introduction, though, we are looking at providing additional overview on apartment complexes in the parish, and that's one of the reasons that we brought this before you as a conditional use permit. Conditional use permits will have to go before the commission, grant approval, and in this case, the approval would be initiated by the zoning commission, and then it would be brought to the council for final action. Right? So
Gotcha.
that's all I have to say on that. And Lance and I are available for questions if you have them.
Okay. So, Commission, what we will do, we will be taking each one of these items individually. I just wanted to go over them all first. But for item A, we're going to open it up for discussion amongst the Commission. So, if anybody has anything. Mr. Dumas, you have the floor.
Thank you. You know, as I was studying this, and I wholeheartedly understand the rationale behind it and what have you, it came, you know, I got to thinking that, you know, we have 2 other apartment complexes in the parish that went through the PUD process, which would actually effectively do everything that's in this ordinance and then some. You know, the only thing that I think we need is that an apartment complex would be limited to only those 2 zoning districts if they were required to go through the PUD process. Through the PUD process, you have a very complex permit requirement, submittal requirement. It covers everything that's in here plus additional items. It also affords us the ability to recommend conditions of approval, and it does go to the parish council as a final approval process. It is a full rezoning process. It's already in the code. And I thought that, you know, it would be simpler if we just simply said that apartment complexes, and here's the amendment that I would recommend, is item A1, all proposed apartment developments should first apply for PUD rezoning from the Ascension Parish Office of Planning and Development. When asking for PUD approval for an apartment development, the applicant must comply with all PUD requirements. And then number 3 would be that apartment complex PUDs are only permitted in the crossroads and mixed-use zoning districts, only those 2 zoning districts. The rest of this is really unnecessary, and I think it runs the potential of maybe creating a conflict, you know, with the process. where if we did it this way, the process is already in the code, it's simple, it goes to the council for final approval. Our role is defined in the code already. Our ability to impose conditions of approval is there, and the requirements for the approval are considerably more extensive than what's in this ordinance. So I think it's a cleaner process. I broached this with staff, and and I think that if again, the language specifically states that apartment complex PUDs are only permitted in those two zoning districts, I think we cover everything. Jerome?
We would agree with that, yes. As a PUD, as long as the PUD for apartments are only allowed within the currently zoned CC and MU categories, I think that would very likely work. Right,
So anyway, so that's a recommendation I would make to us, the commission, and I'll be more than happy to verbalize it into the record. Maybe legal can throw in some comments on this.
Right. The one small aspect I have about that, and while I generally speaking, I do agree with it, if we do have a multifamily unit that doesn't meet the requirement of a PUD, that is less than 2 acres, we could theoretically have something, I think, up to nine houses per unit in 2 acres, up to 2 acres.
That's
So they
the
could
density.
have, in our density code for Crossroads Commercial and Mixed Use.
Correct.
Can we go up to 9?
Well, again, if that's an apartment complex, it would have, if this code, my changes were there, they would have to go through the PUD process, regardless of whether it's 4 units or 400 units.
But what if they don't have the lot size
Then they
requirement
could-
at
then
1.75?
Then,
And then it doesn't,
Then-
so we could potentially have an issue where they could meet all the requirements except for being a PUD and still have a potential mixed use, higher density, maybe a 6-home or, something like that. 2 triplexes on 1 lot.
I think that would fall under the conditional use permit, and they would go see the Board of Adjustments.
no, they would have to, if you only have a 1.5 acre lot and it's non-conforming, correct me if I'm wrong, Jerome, again, you'd have to meet all the, if you're going to build an apartment complex, you're going to have to meet that PUD requirement. You're not going to get your 9 units or.
Right. And that's just one of the small things that I see as maybe an issue.
Well, I don't know that you'd want to create that kind of situation in Ascension Parish, because if you had a 1.5 acre land, that's an awfully small piece of property to put 9 units on.
True.
So I don't know.
And we don't want that
Exactly.
generally anyway.
Right. Well, this
Commissioner
will
Miller.
stop it. This will stop it.
Okay.
I've
Commissioner
got just
Miller.
a few questions about the traffic study there and the green space requirements. Would any apartment complex automatically require the threshold 2 study, or would it still be dependent on the 40 trips?
It depends on the trip. The way the code's read right now, it depends on the trip.
Yeah, but remember, they're doing a PUD, so
Then we can put the conditional, if we go with Julio's idea.
You have
Correct.
a lot
And
more
then,
flexibility there.
Right, and then
Under a PUD.
the green space requirements, it's a 30% green space requirement. As you can imagine, with an apartment complex, that's a lot of concrete they're gonna be putting out there. Are there gonna be any reductions via amenities if they put in a certain, park or something that would be able to reduce that 30%? Or would it be,
No, they'd
standard.
have to meet the current requirements.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
They'd have to still meet those requirements or exceed them in the PUD process.
Well,
They
that's what
wouldn't get away with it.
that's what I'm trying to ask,
Yeah.
are they gonna fall under like a subdivision type of requirement, or they could have some type of restrictions there? Or
Yeah,
this is
it
gonna
should
be a hard
It should be
line?
noted that if they fall under the threshold for traffic studies, then they fall under the threshold. But we do require a drainage study to be prepared, and also we have certain parking requirements that are
Right.
necessary there. So,
Right.
I think that eats
for
up into a lot of.
And-
a 9-unit building, it would be, what, I think 18 spots? Yeah, 2 spots per unit.
Right.
So that in and of itself absorbs a lot of the acreage.
Right.
And sorry to interrupt, but I just want to have some clarification, Mr. Jerome, can we talk about this conditional use permit and this process, just for clarification. So what does this permit give us? What process do they have to follow? And how are we expecting this to work?
Well, the way it's drafted now is that any applicant who wants to put an apartment building or a complex on their site will have to file for a conditional use permit, and that considers the full application process. Then that conditional use permit would go to the zoning commission, and you would either grant or deny or make a recommendation to the council to approve or not approve the apartment complex. But it has to meet all of our current requirements. Drainage study, and if necessary, a traffic study, has to comply with our parking standards and everything else. Now, under the CUP, you'd probably have less oversight in terms of architectural design, things of that sort that you would have in a PUD. So under the PUD, we require elevations. You know, we want to look at the building. We want to make sure it meets our standards. That very likely would not occur under a CUP, but it would under a PUD. All right. So.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Miller.
Yeah, that was a
Oh, okay.
question there.
Anybody else? Mr. Nasser?
Is my mic on? I can't tell. I'm not sure I like this.
Okay.
You know, we're creating a situation where conditional use is going to become the norm through the process. And I'm not sure I agree with that being a regular part of our process, is that you get a conditional use. I mean, I understand we're saying with the PUD we have more control, but then it also provides an opportunity. I don't want to use the term opportunity because it's the opposite of an opportunity. It creates a situation where there could be some very arbitrary and capricious actions if we're considering each one differently, and we're going to be putting specific additional requirements on someone who's bought a piece of property that's properly zoned and they want to go forward with the development of a multi-use, and then we say, well, wait a minute, you have the right zoning, but you've got to do these 10 other things too. And then the next guy comes up, he's got the right piece of property, and he wants to do a development, and we say, well, you've only got to do these 2. And I understand each piece of property is different, but at the same time, you're creating a situation where someone who has good intention of developing a multi-family development, there's no certainty as to what their process is going to be, because they don't know what they're going to be having to do in order to do that development. I just feel that that's not right. And so maybe these things we're talking about, that we say, well, maybe we could, do something with the elevation, and maybe we could do something with this, and maybe we could do something with that. That ought to just be in the code. And it shouldn't have to be a conditional use or a PUD. And this is only my opinion, and I'm certainly not a zoning and planning professional or developer or anything like that. But this is what I'm concerned about.
If I may.
Yeah, just a second. Because we may be creating a situation where all of a sudden it's going to cost an individual 1.5 times what he thought it was going to cost to do this development, and then he can't rent the properties, and it turns into a slum. But anyway, that's all I have to say.
Okay.
I just have some concerns about it. I don't like it.
Okay. Mr. Dumas?
I was just going to say that the reason I'm recommending that we track it in a process that's already in the code is because that process is there. It's understood. It's been used in the past. It was used for prior apartment complexes. It has worked well. And I think it's comprehensive. I also believe that the code is a living and breathing document, and that I think that staff, the commission, and the council has an obligation to identify issues and try to address them, especially when something happens that says, hey, we need to be more cognizant of this particular land use versus that particular land use and make sure that we have the right regulations and procedures in place. So I'm not changing the zoning, I'm just saying apartment complexes is a housing unit that's necessary, and clearly they need to go through a process. And we already have a process in the code, so let's not reinvent one and then have to come back a few months from now and say, oh, we gotta change more conditions because we didn't do it right the first time. We already have a process, and the developers are used to doing that PUD. They've done it before. So I think, that's why, one of the reasons, to your point, we already have an existing process. Let's put them through the process that's in place already, rather than reinventing a new one.
Yeah, my comments are not geared toward your suggestion.
Right.
My comments are geared toward
No,
what
I
was
understand. Yeah.
originally in front of us. And I'm sorry, my comments are not geared toward what Mr. Dumas suggested. My comments are geared toward what was originally put before us. I think that this is, again, my opinion, I think the crux of this problem really is that we don't have a robust enough zoning hierarchy. We just don't have enough classifications. We try to lump things into as few classifications as we can, and then we do conditional use. So I agree that there should be a very well-defined process, and that our development code is a living document, but we shouldn't have to address issues continuously outside of what the written regulations are.
Right.
So maybe, well, not maybe. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe we should take a look at, what our zoning classifications currently are and expand those to where there are additional classifications which controls the way that growth occurs, in what areas does this growth occur? How does the growth occur? Instead of looking at conditional use in something.
Mr. Kluwat.
I agree with Commissioner Nasser on, I think it's a Band-Aid, what we're putting on something that's a temporary fix when we need to look at it and overhaul it more in depth, if we use the PUD I think we need more tools in our tool belt with zoning to address these situations, because it's obviously it's something that's coming to light now that we need to further expand upon. And just as what he said, the ordinance is a living and breathing document that's going to evolve over time.
Real quick, Mr. Drome and Lance, is there a way that we can put in some type of stipulation other than a conditional use permit? Because as the zoning board, we don't have necessarily legislative approval over development. Can we have multifamily units in planning instead? Is that something that we can implement?
Yes, you can put it in there, just like townhomes are in there. The only issue is that with apartments, there's no division of property. These are individual lots, kind of like condos and everything. They're rented or they don't own. So there's no transfer of property or anything like that. So these are basically no divisions of property. And usually when the subdivision code is divisions of property in a subdivision. So that's one of the reasons why it's not in there. So.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I'm okay with having, coming with the plan, but I do not like the subjective parameters, that we're gonna have to each time, I'd like to see a standard across the board written down that we know what we're getting to, the transparency right from the get-go. And then if we need to absolutely weigh in on some variance, that can be accomplished in that application hearing. But the several subjective parameters, like I think Max alluded to, I don't think that's the transparent way to go.
Now, I will tell you, and I'm seeing both sides of this, but the PUD does accomplish that. And so, what we have is we are talking about something that we are making this recommendation to address something that has obviously happened. And our goal right now is we have two really good ideas, but we also want to come up with what we think is going to be the best idea moving forward. And they have some pros and cons on all this. So just keep in mind that we have, two good options. So, yes, sir, Mr. Nasser.
So what, first of all, I want to call on Mr. Dumas's, experience in education and wisdom in, these matters, based on his years of experience. Certainly, I think he's the most knowledgeable of the group. But at the same time that I say that, because I want to ask for I'd like to know what Julio's thoughts are, and I'd like to hear him in the form of a motion to be considered. But at the same time, I just feel like what depending on what the motion is, I just feel like what we're doing tonight, as Randy said, is a temporary Band-Aid approach. And maybe we ought to go ahead and take an action, because we know that's something that needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed now, because we don't know what's coming, but we know what's coming. I just like a caveat that we come back and we look at this again in maybe 12 months or something like that. And by that point in time, I would ask the staff to come back to us with a comprehensive solution to how we go forward with multifamily developments in the future, whether it's additional zoning classifications or whether it's more robust requirements in our current zoning classifications, or whatever it is. But I'd like to take another look at it if I'm still on the commission, and in another 12 months or so. But I'd like to know what staff thinks about that idea, or is that just too much to ask?
We can certainly come back in the future with a more robust ordinance or whatever you'd like. I mean, I guess what we're looking for right now is direction from you. This is the direction we thought that we would take this. And if you feel otherwise, whether it's a PUD, a SPUD, or a conditional use permit, or some other mechanism that's available to the planning community, we'd certainly entertain that and look at it and come back to you with maybe another recommendation. All right.
And Mr. Jerome, that is something that I do believe that this commission does strongly feel. We've got roughly 9, soon to be 10 categories. City of Gonzales has 20-something.
Right.
We've been wanting more categories and more finer detailed categories for zoning for some time, and I know we've made some progress toward implementing that with Ken DeKeese and other works. Mm-hmm. It's just getting to the point where we need to start having more items in our toolbox to make these changes apparent and to finer grain, and without being rude or directing, but we need to direct and request of administration to come to us sooner than later with more zoning categories, so we can start taking this action, and like what we have further on in the agenda, start applying this zoning category to the areas where we see fit. So I don't feel that it's necessary right now to give you a time frame, but within 6 months to a year, we need to start seeing some type of progress, if at all possible. And I think that's a very fair thing. Do we have any other discussion by the commission? At this time, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, I have a question now. Should I include changes to both the ordinance and the language?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay, so with respect to the ordinance, on the first whereas, I would say that a conditional use permit needs to be replaced, require a planned unit development, parentheses, PUD approval for all apartment developments. And then on Exhibit A, under Appendix 2, A1, I would recommend to the commission that we recommend to the parish council that item 1 would read, all proposed apartment developments shall first apply for planned unit development rezoning from the Ascension Parish Office of Planning and Development. Number 2 would read, when seeking PUD approval for an apartment development, the applicant shall conform with all PUD requirements of the code. And item A3 would read, apartment developments, PUDs shall only be permitted in the crossroads and mixed-use zoning districts. I would then delete everything else in Exhibit A as unnecessary. And that would be my motion to recommend to the parish council that.
Okay, do we have a second for that motion?
I can second that.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Nasser. Open up for discussion. Mr. Dumas, I just want to have one bit of clarification, and the clarification is on items A2, when we're seeking the conditional use permit, the traffic impact study.
The
Are-
PUD process has traffic
And I'll-
requirements in it already. so
But I want to make sure that what we're discussing is, do we have, and Spencer, maybe you can answer this question. There is a potential threshold for apartment complexes that will not trigger a traffic study. Can we have in there that at least a minimum of a level 2 is done or something like that?
Yes, I think we can place additional conditions on it. It would just need to be in the form of an ordinance. So we would need to incorporate that
All right, so-
into this
Okay.
ordinance.
I would amend my recommendation then to say that a minimum level 2 traffic study shall be required for all apartment complexes.
Okay, so that sounds good to everybody?
So that'd be item A4.
Okay, and so Commissioner Nasser still has a second. We'll open that to a vote. All in favor of the motion as been read? We can open the voting machines on this. And again, this is a recommendation to the council. Okay, it is a unanimous vote. That ordinance, that recommendation passes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This was not part of the motion, understandably, but I want to make sure that there's an understanding of my request that staff come to the commission with a more robust and complete plan.
Okay, moving on. Item B item for consideration, ordinance DC 23.02, creating a new zoning district designation countryside, CS, Appendix 2 Development Code. Mr. Jerome, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is a really important change, we feel, for the zoning ordinance. First off, we were inundated in 2016 with a major flood event, and a lot of that flood water came to the backside of Santamont and flooded homes, when water came over the Amite River. What we have before you right now is a zoning category that we'd like to introduce that has a minimum 5-acre lots. We would not have the use of fill to elevate homes, right? Homes would typically be built on pier and beam. We would allow a small amount of fill to create driveways and to actually provide some mounding, maybe under a mobile home, things of this sort, that would allow this. And the purpose of this is to keep a corridor open that water can flow and hopefully prevent another 2016 flood through the back areas of Santamont. This project, this zoning change that we're looking at tonight would fall in line with two major projects that the parish is going through right now, and that's the extension of the Laurel Ridge Levee, right, northerly towards the Port Vincent area. And secondly, in coordination with a major grant that the parish has received from the state to elevate, or put a bridge or put some massive culverts or whatever the case may be along Highway 22 in this area that we're talking about tonight, right? And so what that would do, if you remember 2016, Highway 22 pretty much created a dam, and the water was not able to escape and go into Lake Maurepas eventually. It did, but after the road was cut and things of this sort. So I think, having this category which would allow water to flow through that area in conjunction with the 22 grant, and also I'd like to mention that with this category, we get points from FEMA for the CRS program. It's a Community Rating System program that allows cheaper or less expensive flood insurance for the population, all right? So I've got the map that I wanted to show you, and if I can get this. The area in blue that you see on the screen right now is what we're calling countryside, right? And it generally conforms to the coastal zone part of Ascension Parish. And yes, we do have coastal zone in the parish, and that is that low-lying area that, eventually flows into Lake Maurepas, all right? So we think that this is a very important consideration. And in fact, we talked about this when we created our master plan, as you recall, and Commissioner Shakespeare and Commissioner Dumas were a part of that effort as well, when we looked at a 5-acre minimum zoning category to do just this, create that corridor, right? So with that, I'll leave it up to you, and we're available for questions, all right?
Okay. I'm very happy that we're finally having some more zoning categories, and this kind of alludes to what we just had. This is just another layer in our toolbox. This is a very needed thing. The CRS, those code issues to FEMA 2.0 flood rating system, all of these things are very needed for the parish and can help people tremendously. The only small issue I have, and I'm sure that other people may feel, I don't like the naming, and I've kind of voiced it internally, but I am open to some discussion. So let me open it up to the commissioners, and we got Commissioner Nasser first.
I think the only question I have on this is that you stated that one of the purposes of creating this zoning is to allow for the free flow of water so that it can get out of the parish or that area faster, right? And so that creates, excessive pressure downstream. And I'm wondering if there's been any type of hydrology or anything like that that's been studied to see what the actual impact of it is.
I don't have a specific study on what the 5-acre minimum lot size and the lack of fill would hold, but the parish is going through a major drainage master plan right now and a major drainage study. And I had discussed this with some of the principals of the firm that's helping us with that study, and they feel that this is certainly a benefit to the parish. Right?
But there's no engineering to back up the effect relative to the flow of water.
No, there is not.
I mean, I'm not against the 5-acre lots. I'm not against the concept. I'm just wondering if we've done any engineering study to determine whether or not it's actually going to help.
I'd like to say something.
Mr. Nasser, basically, if you look at it from the standpoint of the flow is what the flow is, the hydraulic study is going to show what the existing conditions are. Basically, what this is going to do is going to limit development, limit density of development. So basically, what we're trying to do is not go back in there and back up and change anything. We're basically trying to prevent anything from changing to a great degree from where it is now. So we hope to maintain whatever hydraulic capacity there is, and what's being increased by going through Highway 22, like Jerome said, the extension of the levee and all of that stuff. So we're trying to maintain and protect it from extra development that would cause problems, as you discussed.
Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, so my understanding right now is that the majority of the map covered, by the blue there is already conservation or coastal zoning, which is pretty much our most restrictive zoning category already.
It is. It's currently it's 1 acre minimums, though.
Okay, and so we want to expand it to 5 acres.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I know.
And limit the fill.
And yeah, that's another question I have there is because, it's kind of, the language is subjective in saying that the planning director is going to be able to determine that amount. And we just, in that last discussion, we just said that. I don't want to see the subjective parameters. I want to see something laid out that would say no fill.
Okay.
You're taking that, knowing going into it, you have no fill.
Yeah. Well,
I would like to see a full presentation on this, including some of the data like that Mr. Nasser just requested, because I saw the council meeting last week that Kenny Keast is being put on the back burner for now, putting on hold because of, wanting the development community to be able to catch up with what we have. I think adding another category right now would kind of muddy the water on that. So I'd like to see something that is very pristine in knowing, with this presentation of what's to be expected going into this category without some of this subjective language that's in there now. I think even the parish president alluded to it today, that Kenny Keast had fallen off with their level of service after the loss of that one of that key employees there. So I'd like to see, if they are going to change. I know they were kicking the tires on the idea of changing firms. Let's see if that's going to go through and get a second set of eyes, or have a full presentation on this, knowing that, with all the pertinent information that we need to make this type of ordinance change. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay. Commissioner Dumas?
I was just going to say that, what the parish is proposing here is really to reduce the pressure on the drainage system, is to prevent developments from getting started in this area that would put pressure on our drainage system, which already needs a lot of help. Whether it's a stopgap measure while this master plan is done and we'll come back and revisit it, I think it's critical, anything we can do to keep that low area of real estate in Ascension Parish from further developing. It's a good thing. It's going to help relieve the pressure on the drainage system. The only thing that's missing for me here is that what about if someone has a parcel of land that's less than 5 acres? I want to make sure that it's recognized as a valid non-conforming lot, provided it existed at the day the ordinance was adopted. So I would, to be honest with you, I would move that we move forward with it. I don't like the name Countryside District either. I just assume we have conservation. This one's a 5 acre instead of 1 acre. Call it Conservation 5. I mean, it's easy, And I don't know if staff has a problem with that. That's what I would do. And so if it's okay, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval with 2, change the name to Conservation 5 and add paragraph C, parcels less than 5 acres in size at the date this ordinance is adopted by the parish council shall be treated as a valid non-conforming parcel.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that, but I'd like to offer.
And we do have discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll second that, but I'd like to offer a small friendly amendment.
Absolutely.
Mr. Miller expressed concern that the fill quantities would be approved or determined by the planning director. Maybe it should be by planning director or planning director or the head of the appropriate parish department that deals with drainage.
I think that's a very valid thing, to require the engineering department to review that. I think that's okay with you? Yeah, so it'd be approved by the planning director or director of engineering.
Okay, and in our discussion, I do want to ask, we currently have a fill permit,
We-
correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
We need to make sure if we're going to have any type of fill, that fill permit is applied and used. So we do have, I have to agree with Mr. Miller. I don't like it being arbitrary where it's, if they do 5 yards or 25 yards, that we need to know if they've got 5 acres and they've got 200 feet of a driveway at a 10 to 15 foot wide driveway, that could potentially have quite a lot of yardage of fill. So I would be very much in favor of having some type of control over that and a little less arbitrariness. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Nasser?
Yes, in response to what you just said. I in concept agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, we have to understand that not all the property is going to have similar surface conditions, and in some cases, just to maintain a level driveway, you might need an extra 2 yards, or you might, not need it or whatever. So I would still prefer to leave it up to engineering.
How would we incorporate some type of engineering in this, Mr. Jerome?
We could actually ask our engineering review agency, CSRS, Chanchero, and that team to kind of look at this, for us, and weigh in on the amount of fill that might be necessary to create a driveway. And that's all we're really looking for right now. We're not looking to use an extensive amount of fill in order to raise the house or
Right.
create a driveway. But we also want to allow people to develop the property as best they can, given the circumstances as to where they are. So under trailers, as you notice, mobile homes, they have this little mounding that they put that stabilizes the platform that the trailer lies upon. Those are the type of things that we would allow, of course. And it does have the need for some discretion, to do this.
Okay.
And so that's why we kind of left that open. But, if you want to tighten up the language in that, we're certainly welcome to that.
So just in order to be, clear with the amendment to the motion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Jerome, help us out. A minimum amount of fill is approved by the planning director and
And the engineering review agency.
review agency, okay?
Yes.
Now, will that have any additional costs to the landowner?
It would. You mean
Will that be
putting
too
fill on
much?
the property?
Well, no, I'm talking about for the review of the engineering agency. Will that put too much of an onus, cost on the landowner?
I mean, it will cost something. I couldn't tell you what it's going to be. I mean, if we have a driveway that's a quarter of a mile long, that's going to have one effect, and as opposed to one that's, 100 feet long. So,
Well, but what my worry is, if we're involving an engineer, let's use a mobile home, for example, and they have a long driveway, there may be financial constraints that we're imposing with this ERA that make this put things out of the building ability for some of these families.
We're talking a minimal cost.
Okay, well, no, that's what, no, but, I mean, is it $10,000 for the cost? I mean, that's what I'm asking, so.
well, let me say that CSRS reviews almost all of the development plans that come through the office right now, as they do subdivision maps, plats, and this sort. So they are the arm of the parish from an engineering standpoint.
Right, I just want to make sure that the homeowners don't have to incur additional unbearable costs, that's all.
Right.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Miller?
Yeah, my understanding is that this zoning is trying to prevent a change in trajectory of the water flow, and putting that fill in there is doing just that, whether it's a small mound or a driveway.
It is.
You're simply doing the same thing, whether it's Highway 22 or their driveway.
Right.
And I think that is what we're trying to prevent, and adding that in there is not accomplishing that.
Well,
I get it. You got 5 acres
Well,
in some low-lying areas
Right.
to buy your house, but
Yeah.
that was the reason we're doing this, is to
Yeah.
stop we want the water. Plus with the, like you said, the Law Levy Extension Project, I think that's gonna change the water a bit as well, you know? How do we know how that's gonna be affected? And what the impact would be?
Yeah.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, and, you know, technically, yeah, the driveway is going to affect the water flow. But at the same time, what we're preventing is those 5 acres of storage for water. We're preventing that from being filled.
Right.
And taken out of retention or storage. And I think that that's an important consideration. What you're saying about the water flow, I mean, yeah, they're just, you know.
Yeah, I like the
hydraulics,
increase from the
that's
1
gonna
acre to
happen.
the 5 acre. I think
But-
that helps with that retention,
But
like you're saying.
yeah,
I don't wanna, you know.
significantly helps to prevent the fill.
Okay. Do we have any further comments? Okay, we're going to open up the voting booth on this, and as it stands right now, our motion is recommend for approval to the to the parish council, the grading of this new zoning district designation Conservation 5 with the amendment as stated by Mr. Dumas
And further amended by.
and further amended by Commissioner Nasser. So that's how we are voting.
Can we get a reading of that? I'd like to hear the language. Yeah, with the amendments and all.
So item B would be amended to read, a minimum amount of fill as approved by the planning director and engineering reviewing agency shall be permitted in the zoning designation. And item C is added, parcels less than 5 acres in size in existence at the date this ordinance is adopted by the parish council shall be treated as a valid non-conforming parcel.
And the only change to A and everything is the change of the
The
name.
name is Conservation 5 instead.
So,
And the, I'm sorry, you said it. Never mind.
okay. So we're going to open up the voting rolls on that, and that is how we are voting at this time. Okay, that motion passes unanimously for a recommendation to the council. Item C, item for consideration, ordinance ZM 23.04, revisions to the zoning map countryside, soon to be called Conservation 5, zoning designation. Mr. Jerome?
Yeah, basically, this just outlines the map as to where that new category will reside. And
Okay.
it's the blue area that we showed you before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any discussion by the commission? Oh, hold on. Mr. Villa, I apologize.
Can you bring up the map right quick? Quick question.
What do you- Hang on, I'll put it on.
I'm trying to understand what's below I-10. I see 70 and 22, but, yeah, well, it's beyond that. Is that like towards 3125, 3127, whatever?
That area, I'll put my cursor here. Is this the area you're talking about?
below 10.
That's like the Marvin Road
Yeah.
pump station area, and then south of 70.
Basically, we took the boundaries that are outlined by the state, for the coastal zone, and that's what really carved the boundary out for this particular district. But I think most of that's wetland area, for the most part.
Is that
Yeah, I'm trying to,
towards that management area?
what minute?
Management area going out towards reserve and,
Mr. Villa just triggered a question on my part.
Go for it.
Mr. Dumas?
Are we recommending a map to the parish council at this time?
Yes, we are. So
We didn't see it in the packet.
this map was in your packet.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
it wasn't in the actual agenda map, but it was the downloadable portion.
All right, well, if it's on the packet, I'm happy. That's good.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's all that matters.
Any other questions?
No, the only, I do have a comment on the table. I think we just need to make sure we're correct where it says CU under MU and CC, change it to PUD. We don't need note number 3, and then change the CS to C5.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion, we recommend approval of the table as amended.
Okay, second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dumas to recommend approval as amended with the name changes as such. Second by Commissioner Nasser. Let's open up the voting booths, please. Okay. Oh, sorry. That's all right. And that motion passes. Item 6, we'll have a public hearing to amend the Ascension Parish Developmental Code zoning tables for recommendation for the approval or denial to the Ascension Parish Council. Item A, item for consideration, ordinance ZT-23.02 to amend Appendix 1 zoning table of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, LDC, to add a conditional use permit and a site plan review by the Zoning Commission for multifamily residential apartments.
I hate to say this, but since we already voted on this, out of order, I guess we got to vote on it again, right?
Well, this is for the actual ordinance. So we had to have the consideration to require a use. Now we're voting to append the zoning table for that use. So, but first, we do have to open a public hearing. Ms. Jamaica, do we have anybody here to speak on this?
No one's here to speak.
Okay, and then we'll close the public hearing. So for this item, Mr. Jerome, do you have any comments?
None, just modifying the table.
Okay.
And we'll modify it based on the C5 standard that we just.
Well,
I'm
this
sorry,
one, this
this
one
is
is
the
for
one
the
for the-
PUD that
yeah.
we, okay.
It'll be modified per the previous discussion
Okay.
that we had.
So,
I'm sorry. I messed
just
up.
for the commission to know, our recommendation for this is that we would have it as a PUD and with those amendments. So while we have it on here for a conditional use, we will be recommending a PUD in that statement as approved by Mr. Dumas.
Yeah.
I guess we need to vote on it again, don't know, since this matter.
Well, this is to modify,
I know,
Yeah,
that's what I
for that,
brought up the
yes.
last time.
oh, no.
I jumped the gun on it.
Okay.
I apologize.
So, Mr. Nasser.
So my only question is, because of the amendments that we adopted previously on the similar item, is there a requirement for some language changes in what we're considering now?
Yes, because in our zoning table, okay, we had, at commercial, we had multifamily approval, where you could have that in a commercial development. Now we've restricted it to mixed use and crossroads commercial. So our motion would be to include that PUD language for only crossroads commercial and mixed use. Am I correct, Spencer?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
If I may, the simplest thing is for me to restate the original motion that I made
Yes.
when I jumped the gun, and that is, and I'll take them one at a time, it is to recommend approval to the parish council for modification to the table to, under MU and CC, to have PUD for multifamily and residential apartments, and the elimination of Note 3, which is no longer necessary because of the PUD process.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Kluwat. Do we have any further discussion?
I do have one, so that's going to
Okay,
bring.
Mr. Miller?
That process is going to bring that now to zoning or to,
Oh, it goes to us
And
and
not
then
planning.
and then council.
it's going to stay with zoning, though?
It's going to
correct?
stay in
Okay.
zoning,
And not.
and if we have a PUD, it will be the joint planning and zoning.
Right.
It will still require approval by the council for the ordinance change. Now, and that's where that would lie. So, any further discussion? Let's open up the booth on that. And that motion passes. Item B, item for consideration, ordinance ZT 23.03, amend Appendix 1 zoning tables of the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, LDC, to add a new zoning designation of Conservation 5 is what we're going to be discussing. And so, on that, Mr. Jerome?
Mr. Chairman, can I have a point of order?
Yes.
Did you guys actually take a vote on the map?
Yes.
We did.
Oh. Yeah.
Outside of the room, so I don't know.
No, we did not. No. That's why I asked it the map, because I missed it. We
Okay.
did not take a vote on the map.
So that would be item 5C?
I recommend we conclude this one and go back to 5C.
Okay. We will go back and go back to 5C. Huh? I thought we did.
John said they did.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Well, our recommendation on 5C was to approve the map as presented.
We did.
Can we double check that?
Outside of the room.
I thought Commissioner Dumas had made the
Well,
amendment
we,
based on the language change from earlier.
what's that?
I said, I feel like I recall Commissioner Dumas making the language change based on the previous discussions.
Right, the amendment, excuse me, the recommendation for approval was approve the map with the recommended name changes as Commissioner Dumas had
Okay.
requested.
Then I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yes, sir. We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Wonderful. So on item B, do we have any discussion from administration?
No, this is just modifying the table to include the C5, category.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Dumas. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Miller. Do we have any discussion? Okay, open for business. Okay, that motion passes. Item 7, staff report.
No report.
No report. And item 8, moved by Commissioner Dumas, second by Commissioner Nasser. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.